This is Michael Popok, and it's time for Legal AF After Dark. Judge Lewis Kaplan occupies a unique position as a federal judge who's presided over not one but two civil cases against Donald Trump, both for rape, defamation, and punitive damages brought by E Jean Carroll. We got a new order from Judge Lewis Kaplan, who excoriates, takes to task Donald Trump for his reprehensible and immoral behavior, leading to his punitive damages award in total, up to $83.5 million. In rejecting Donald Trump's motion for new trial and to reduce his damage award, Judge Lewis Kaplan goes even further, and we discuss it and analyze it on Legal AF. Take a listen.
Michael Popok, I do want to talk about briefly, though, while we're in Manhattan. We're obviously talking about state court criminal proceedings. Why don't we go to federal court, though, and talk about federal civil proceedings, where Trump, we obviously know, was previously hit with an $80+ million civil judgment for defamation. Trump's appealing that. But he also filed a motion for new trial before federal Judge Lewis Kaplan that was denied this past week. And I want to use the language that a well-respected federal judge, Judge Lewis Kaplan, was also the same judge who has handled mafia cases. He's handled some of the most high-profile, big cases out there. He's been a judge since 1995. From being a member of the New York bar. I mean, he's a legend. He's no nonsense. He's law and order. No one's ever accused Kaplan of being like a political hack. The guy is freaking brilliant, and no one's ever doubted that, no matter what side of the case you're on. Here's what he said in denying Donald Trump's motion for a new trial. The jury in a closely related case tried previously found that Donald Trump forcibly sexually abused plaintiff E Jean Carroll in the mid-1990s and maliciously defamed her in an October 2022 statement. In this case, another jury awarded Ms. Carroll $17.3 million in compensatory and $65 million in punitive damages against Mr. Trump for defaming her in two other statements that Mr. Trump issued from the White House on June 21 and 22 of 2019. Mr. Trump now moves for a new trial, or alternatively for judgment as a matter of law, dismissing this case. Well, Judge Kaplan goes on to say, Mr. Trump's malicious and unceasing attacks on Ms. Carroll were disseminated to more than 100 million people. They included public threats and personal attacks, and they endangered Ms. Carroll's health and safety. The jury was entitled to find that the degree of reprehensibility of Mr. Trump's conduct was remarkably high, perhaps unprecedented. It goes on to say, castigating Carroll from the loudest bully pulpit in America and possibly the world. Through Donald Trump's courtroom demeanor and conduct, Trump put his hatred and disdain on full display. Think about that. And as we go talk about in our next segment, Donald Trump's claim of absolute immunity to launch coups against the country and kill political opponents and steal nuclear secrets and sell them to whoever he wants. I mean, Popok, when we see what's going on, we can't be numb to this type of finding. This is not okay. This is not acceptable behavior for anyone, yet alone someone in a position like this. So would love to hear your thoughts on Judge Kaplan really dropping the hammer powerfully there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lou Kaplan is the perfect person, as you outlined, to do it. He's presided for the last 3 years over both E Jean Carroll cases. He watched a 9-person jury, because this was federal civil. For more information, go to our Patreon, as opposed to 12-person criminal case in New York. He watched 2 9-person juries vote against Donald Trump, so 18-0 against Donald Trump, finding technical rape. I say technical rape because of New York's very unique rape statute at the time, basically rape, constant, incessant defamation and attacks on E. Jean Carroll, and then punitive damages, $5.5 billion in the first one, and then the second one, the $83.5 million. Donald Trump was trying to reduce the $83.5 million, both the actual damages and the punitive damage award, acting if they were not consistent with the facts or the law that were developed. He argued that the judge gave the jury the wrong instruction on the burden of proof that was required for, let's say, punitive damages. And the judge, and just as we segue into our later segments today, yes, Alina Habba and Cliff Robert were on the brief, but John Sauer, who was the advocate at the immunity argument before the United States Supreme Court, had been brought in for appellate purposes, and he was on the brief. So they got New York law wrong. New York law says it is only a preponderance of the evidence, which means balanced scales of justice with a feather on one side, ever so slightly tipping in favor of the burden of proof rather than not clear and convincing, which is a much higher standard to prove it. They also said that they got the standard wrong for punitive damages, that it has to be, it's not common law malice, it's actual malice as that term is understood in constitutional precepts, and it's not. So the judge, the middle of the brief or the order was a lot of, arcane, technical New York stuff. But at the end, and at the very beginning, it was, you were a rapist that was adjudged by two juries, and they watched your reprehensible conduct, which forms the basis, this is the judge now, which forms the basis of the punitive damage award in the courtroom in real time while you continued to manufacture bad, reprehensible facts while the trial was still going on, and they watched your behavior in the courtroom, the jury did, before they rendered their decision on punitive damages. For instance, the judge reminded Mr. Trump, for instance, in the beginning of the closing argument for the female attorney, Robbie Kaplan, representing E. Jean Carroll, talk about lack of irony and misogyny on full display and disrespect. Trump got up, and the judge reminded him in his order. He got up as the advocate started her closing, buttoned his jacket, and walked out of the courtroom in front of the jury. But then returned later when his lawyer, I don't know if Alina Habba did the closing, I can't remember, but when his lawyer did the closing, came back for that. He said in his order, that kind of conduct, that kind of acting out, there's no doubt that the jury factored things like that in real time to find you and hold you accountable. And then the judge went through a bunch of decisions in New York where the jury award, if you run it forward to $2024, it was within the heartland. What the jury did here in trying to give a measure of dignity back as best as they could to E. Jean Carroll in the form of a punitive damage award, it kind of fell within those cases. But if Donald Trump, who tussled, and we're going to talk about it at the midweek and next week about what happens at the contempt hearing, he tussled with Lou Kaplan regularly. Kaplan would say, "I know you don't like this decision that I'm making right now," and he would yell back at Luke Kaplan, not with the jury in the room, just like he took on Judge Engoron. He doesn't, to your point and your credit earlier in the podcast, he doesn't take on Vershawn like that in the courtroom. Everything that we're going to be talking about, this contumacious behavior of his, has been outside of the courtroom in podcasts and social media, in rallies, and all the other stupid things that he does. But Luke Kaplan, I think, and that was the reminder I wanted to make at the beginning of the podcast. As people are making their decision, to the extent that they still are, and apparently the polling says they still are, about who should be given the honor of being a leader of the free world and being in the Oval Office again, I don't know how you can ignore, 18 jurors in New York fighting against Donald Trump and Luke Kaplan fighting against him as powerfully as he just did.
I have these, unfortunately, I think my analysis is accurate, although I feel so stupid articulating it. So I guess, as I would tell my law students, there's no stupid question. So perhaps there's no stupid theories. So I'll just give it to you. And I have data points for it. I think that Donald Trump treats Justice Merchan a little bit differently is because Donald Trump thinks that Justice Merchan is a good looking man and a handsome man, and that Donald Trump's all like looks and appearance based, and he views Justice Merchan as having this like distinguished look of what Trump thinks a judge should look like. And that gets into Donald Trump's like pig brain. And if you look at past posts that he's made, Trump said things like, although he's a very distinguished looking man, he is still a Trump hating whatever. And I think that frazzles him in the courtroom. And I know that may sound like a totally like, what are you talking about, man? Give me the legal analysis. I've studied the guy's pathology now in these speeches, and I think there's something to it. When we come back,
wait, before you leave, so people don't think you're totally crazy. There's new documents came out in Mar-a-Lago. We're not going to talk about Mar-a-Lago today, in which witness number 16, and we'll figure out who that is when they finally testify against Trump, said that Donald Trump picked lawyers based on their appearance, that he saw Trusty dressed up nice on some television show and picked him, that a woman lawyer that he picked, and I think we can figure out who that is, he liked the way she dressed. So I don't think you're off kilter in your analysis.
Yeah, and those documents that were released in the Judge Eileen Cannon Mar-a-Lago document case where Trump willfully retained national defense information, they talked about witness 16 or person 16 talked about how one of the lawyers would kind of walk in front of Donald Trump dressed a certain way at Mar-a-Lago so that she or that he or whoever we think this person may be could be getting more cases and more involvement in the cases by doing that. That was absolutely devastating what person 16 said and broke as. This was someone who was in the Oval Office with Donald Trump who pointed out very specifically that this person 16 had told Donald Trump, you're violating the law. Return the boxes. These don't belong to you. What in the world are you doing? And then talked about all the other crazies in Trump's world who were knowingly violating the law and giving Trump unlawful information. But Trump's argument is that he's immune from everything, that there is no such thing as criminal cases that can ever exist if someone holds the office of the presidency. His lawyers made some of the most, I think, gross and outrageous arguments I've ever heard, period.
Welcome back. That's what we do every week, twice a week, only on the MeidasTouch Network, is exclusively right here. We sit at the intersection of law and politics so that you don't have to. We use our vast experience as lawyers practicing in these types of courtrooms to explain it to you in a way that we hope is both informational and educational, and sometimes entertaining. Wednesdays and Saturdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here. I do it on Wednesdays with Karen Friedman-Agnifilo, Saturdays with Ben Meiselas, and then on hot takes like this one, about every hour right here on the MeidasTouch Network. So if you like it, you like that kind of analysis, and that's something you find interesting, join our show if you don't know about it already. If you know everything you need to know about Legal AF, you actually caught that episode, take that clip, use it as part of our, be our marketing department. We don't have one. We need one. Take it, send it off to friends and family and people in your life and say, hey, Legal AF, take a listen. Maybe they will. Maybe they'll join us, and we'll really appreciate that. So until our next hot take, until our next Legal AF, until my next, I don't know what, hot take Legal AF After Dark Patreon exclusive video. This is Michael Popok reporting. Heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.